Lights, camera, and action.
Welcome to the I Remember Liking That Movie podcast.
Remember those childhood movies you loved? We're going to watch them again and find out if they're still as amazing as you remember. Let's get ready to join Anna and Jimmy as they go back and watch those movies you remember being oh so awesomely good. Horror movies that scared. Comedy movies that dared.
Damn!
And action movies so preposterously ludicrous that they defied the laws of common sense. Now, here's your hosts, Anna Santos and Jimmy Coates.
Okay, welcome to the I Remember Liking That Movie podcast. This week we are still continuing our drive-in, and the two movies we are watching this week are DC Cab from 1983 and Death Wish 2 from 1982. The more I did this, the more I think we might have made a big mistake setting some stuff up. And the more I do it, I don't know if I've seen Death Wish 2. Like I'm starting to. I know I've seen Death Wish 3 multiple times and Death Wish 4 a couple times, but nothing familiar with Death Wish 2 at all.
I have never seen Death Wish 2. I can confirm this, nor have I ever seen DC Cab. So,
okay, there you go.
It's going to be a fun week for me.
Well, DC Cab is one of the, and I say this every time it happens, I'll probably say it every other time, is when I used to spend some summers at my grandparents down in the city, and my aunt and uncles were down there. I would borrow movies, and this was definitely one of them. And I remember it being funny. So you don't remember anything about DC Cab?
Nothing. Not a thing.
Okay, well, I remember a bit, and because Mr. T was in it, and I loved Mr. T.
Mr. T is awesome. We love Mr. T.
I love Mr. T so much. I tried so hard to convince my parents to let me get a mohawk. And they said, no, you'll look, well, it was like the 80s, so you can only imagine what they called me. Politically incorrect, nonstop. Yeah, but they didn't let me get the mohawk. That's probably a good thing. I just remember it being silly and funny. Now, before we dive right into it, this was the first movie directed by Joel Schumacher.
Oh, really?
Right. For those who don't know who Joel Schumacher is, he's done actually quite a few things. He's done like Tigerland, Phone Booth, 8mm, A Time to Kill.
Yeah.
Batman Forever, The Client, which was good. Falling Down was one of my favorites. Flatliners.
St. Elmo's Fire.
Did he really?
Yeah, he directed St. Elmo's Fire.
He directed The Lost Boys.
He has apparently been a part of my entire childhood, and I never realized how much.
Never realized it.
You start reading his resume, and you're like, well, shit.
Yeah, because I'll be honest, I read that off IMDb, and I didn't realize he directed half those movies.
Well, because it's a name like...
You know the name.
Like when you know the name and you know he's done a lot of stuff and you're like, cool. We recently reviewed Batman and Robin.
Yeah. Well, he did Batman Forever, not Batman and Robin. Oh, no, he did Batman and Robin too.
Yeah.
Shame on you, Joel Schumacher.
No, it's okay. Thank you, Joel Schumacher. But like Lost Boys, St. Elmo's Fire. St. Elmo's Fire is one of my favorite movies of all time.
I have not seen that movie in so long. I would love to do that movie because it's been a minute.
I'm telling you right now, every time it's on TV, I need to watch it. Like it's
every time I hear that song.
Oh, so good. A Time to Kill was revolutionary.
Yeah, it was great.
Like Flatliners.
Oh, I remember Flatliners.
Oh God.
The Lost. Yeah, like a lot of good movies from my childhood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
From my childhood, and also
my teens. Yeah.
He also directed the Phantom of the Opera movie.
Oh,
which was actually a really great interpretation of the Phantom of the Opera.
It wasn't bad.
Yeah. So I was like, this man has been doing a lot. So I can forgive him for Batman and Robin.
Well, we might have to forgive him for this. Now, this also stars Adam Baldwin, is not related to any of the other Baldwins,
Correct.
but you'll remember him from Serenity or Firefly,
Yes.
Independence Day, The Patriot, Full Metal Jacket. Like
Wasn't
he's
he
done
also
a
in Chuck?
lot.
I feel like he was on Chuck.
He was in a couple episodes.
Yep,
of,
he did Chuck.
Oh,
yeah. He was in The Last Ship.
Yeah,
I've been thinking about doing.
Oh, he's done. He's one of those guys that pop up, and you're like, oh, I know that guy.
Mm-hmm.
And he did a great movie with who's the guy from Jaws? Roy Schneider.
A
movie called Conan Tate, where they're both hitmen and they were hired to kidnap, and if things go wrong, kill a little boy. And it is such a good movie. It was one of those movies like you're like, oh my. He was in Next of Kin. With our favorite there, Patrick Swayze.
Yes.
Predator 2. He's done a lot. Adam Baldwin has done a lot. And
He has been working very steadily. He has had some controversial political views, which has disappointed a lot of his fans who found him through Chuck and Serenity and things like that.
I think you can have certain political views and still be. What happened like when people used to be like, I'm liberal, I'm a Republican, but you can still be neighbors? Or is this guy like a Nazi?
Well, no, he's not a Nazi. I'd like to officially go on
like if he's got a swastika flag flying outside the
no.
home, I get it.
Thankfully, no. But this is why I say he's had some controversial, like it's a little disappointing for some of the fans. There wasn't really an uproar about it, but it was kind of people being like, oh.
Yeah, that's why I always say don't ever put too much stock in Hollywood actors and actresses and directors. Like they're good at what they do, but they might not. Their way of life, like look at what's his name that ate people. And I liked The Lone Ranger, and I liked that 70. What's that 70 movies he did? He's done a few good movies. Army
Hammer, yeah. Who apparently has clarified he is not an actual cannibal.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go.
I mean, when you have to clarify that about your life, I feel like you've already made some bad choices.
Yeah.
But no. I think that's because the time, like back in the day, it used to be, oh, I'm a Republican, I'm a liberal, or I'm a conservative. It used to mean something different 20 years ago to what it means today.
Yeah, everyone seems to be do or die.
Well, because I think there are a lot of like moderate voters who are like, we can take both, like conservative ideals and liberal ideals, and let's work together. But there's such a loud, extreme, like small section of each side that you're just kind of like, you're ruining it for everybody.
Yeah.
But I mean, there are certain things that make me a little, like when I heard about Adam Baldwin, I was like, oh, I really thought you were going to be one of those crazy liberals. I was really hoping for that. I still think he's a nice man. I've heard wonderful things about people who work with him on set.
Yeah, he's supposed to be really cool. Well, if you work with if you worked on Firefly and you worked with the star of Firefly there,
Nathan Fillion.
And he said he was a cool guy. So if Nathan Fillion thinks you're a cool guy,
a lot. Well, I mean, we can always talk about the stuff that happened on the set of The Rookie.
Oh, and Castle.
Like there have been some issues, but there's always going to be a power dynamic issue, and it's really easy to not recognize some of the fucked up dynamics when you're a good-looking white guy.
Yeah,
I
have that problem all the time.
I know you do. I know, but also Nathan Fillion played like one of the Buchanan boys on One Life to Live. So I mean, he's been working since he was like in his early 20s.
Yeah.
And maybe even earlier. So he's had a 30-year long career. So he knows how to play the game. He knows how to work the system.
Yeah.
He just hasn't taken a lot of DEI kind of courses to be like, let's recognize how not to insult people, even though we don't even realize we're doing it. But Hollywood has that issue in general, whether you're conservative, liberal, a jerk, or one of the greatest people ever. It's just not super diverse behind the scenes.
Yeah. Well, this movie is diverse because it also has Mr. T. I love Mr. T when I was a kid.
I love
really
Mr.
did.
T
Like
too.
18.
My brother-in-law is black, and this is important for the story. He cut his hair into like a kind of faux hawk. It wasn't a full mohawk, but it was pretty hawking. And everybody started calling him Mr. T. And I just got into the habit of every time I saw him, I'd be like, I pity the fool. Every time. And he's like, can you stop that? I'm like, shave off the mohawk. But anyways.
It also has Charlie Barnett. You probably recognize it. Like he's been in a few things. It also has our buddy, Gary Busey.
Gary Busey.
Marsha Warfield, who was a comic actor. I don't know if she was a comedian, but she was the black lady on Night Court.
Yes.
Wondering.
She played a bailiff.
Yeah, she's done more, but that's her big.
That's what she's most recognizable from. But I mean, we've all seen her on many things.
Bill Maher.
That was
a very young Bill Maher. Paul Rodriguez, who was like the token Spanish dude for like the 80s.
Yes, he was the Latino representation for a lot of movies and TV shows in the 80s.
And he was always funny when I remember him as a kid. Whenever I saw him, and he was always fun, and you always knew him.
I feel like he started in stand-up.
I think yes, he did.
Yeah. But I mean, he has also had a very prolific career. Like he's a hustler.
Yeah. And Max Gail. And if you don't know who Max Gail is, my father would watch this and we get mad because he would come into the living room, tell us to give him the remote. Actually, it probably wasn't even a remote. But he would change the channel to Barney Miller. And we'd be like, I appreciated Barney Miller when I got older. It was quite clever and it is a funny show. But as a kid, I did not like Barney Miller. And he played He played hold on, I got it here. Detective Stan Hold on.
I'm trying to find. Oh God, what was his character? I had it.
Wojo.
Yes. Jenko.
Yeah, and he was one of the more popular characters. Well, they were all pretty popular. It was a very popular show.
You know what? Actually, it was funny because once you said Barney Miller, I was like, that sounds super familiar. So then I looked at it and I was like, wait, I've seen episodes of this show.
Yeah, probably your dad.
No, actually, it wasn't my dad. In my house, we watched.
Probably just flipping around then.
Probably flipping because I watched a lot of older TV shows when I was in like younger. Like I was 8 or 9 years old and I was watching stuff from like the 70s.
Yeah.
In the early 80s.
I used to love it.
Yeah.
I used to love I loved One Day at a Time. I loved All in the Family. I loved all of it. I love sitcoms. Very like comfort food.
Well, I really liked a lot of the ridiculous TV shows like The Monkees. I grew up watching Benny Hill with my mom.
Yeah, Benny Hill was really funny.
Yeah, I thought it was
I like Benny Hill. Monty Python.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was a lot of stuff that I ended up watching, which I was way too young for. We realize this now. Back then we were like, whatever, it's on TV. It's fine. Just watch it.
There wasn't a lot to choose from. All right, so let's go. To the box office. All right. Now, the budget of $8 million, DC Cab made about $16.1 million. Back then, marketing wasn't like it is today. So this quite possibly made a profit.
This made probably a pretty decent profit because their marketing budgets back then were teeny tiny.
It was one of 9 new releases that weekend that it opened. It opened in 862 theaters at a distant 9th place. It went back and forth from 9th to 10th for 4 weeks at a peak of 908 theaters before dropping to 14th place. Even though it dropped from most theaters, it did stay in a small amount of them for 54 weeks.
Holy shit.
So it did not make a ton of money, but it did okay.
It did a pretty good run.
All right. Oh, here we go. All right. Tale of the tape. DC Cab. There's the back of our VHS. December 16th, 1983. It is a comedy. It is rated R and comes in at 1 hour and 39 minutes.
This all sounds very promising.
Here are the taglines.
Let's go.
Let the wackiest cab company in town take you for a ride.
Not the greatest.
When these guys hit the streets, guess what hits the fan?
Oh, that's pretty good.
Pity the fool who messes with Mr. T.
Perfect.
And that was it. Here is the synopsis. Aspiring taxi driver Albert Hockenberry, Adam Baldwin arrives in Washington, D.C. to work for a service run by family friend Harold Oswald, Max Gail, whose uniformly eccentric employees, that's better, drive ancient cabs. When a priceless violin is found in one of the cars, the $10,000 reward money needed to keep the business afloat is stolen by Harold's bitter wife, Myrna Anne DeSalvo. Determined to save the company, Harold pledges his life savings towards the business.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's wacky. It's wacky and silly. There's the poster. They really, Mr. T was, for those listening, Mr. T in the 80s was huge. I don't even know what he did other than like he appeared in WrestleMania. He appeared in Rocky 3. And then he did some other, and he appeared on children's programs and told people like to stay in school.
Dude, you're missing the A-Team.
But when did the A-Team come out? I think this was before the A-Team.
We're going to find out. Okay, so this was 1983.
So they shot in 82. Maybe the A-Team just came out and they're like, holy shit, this thing's... A-Team started in 83. You're right.
Damn.
So it was huge. I remember A-Team being huge.
So by the time the A-Team would have hit, but he was already like, he's one of those personality, like celebrities where he was also another hustler. Like he was out there, he was working it.
And I remember the Mr. T cereal. I remember seeing the Mr. T cereal in stores, and I fondly remember Pee-wee's Big Adventure because he ate Mr. T cereal and he pitied the fool that tried to eat his cereal. Mr. T. But the poster is it's Mr. T and it's all cartoony stuff. It looks very silly and wacky, all drawn. And he's holding the door to a cab. It says DC Cab. At DC Cab, when these guys hit the streets, guess what hits the fan? Obviously, it's a comedy. You can tell by the poster. It's not a bad poster. I wouldn't hang it anywhere.
No, it's not a hangable poster.
No. All right, so this is where I think we might have. Hold on, let me see, because I think I mixed these up.
It's okay, I forgive you.
Here, let me click it away. Do. All right, let's go to Rotten Tomatoes. 11 critics. This movie comes in at 18%.
Wow.
That is 18% is 2. 2 critics liked it.
That's wow.
5,000 audience members comes in at 52%. So the audience kind of split, kind of just slightly over half liked it. So you may start with the fresh. There are only 2 of them, so you can have the first one.
Thanks. Appreciate it. An inessential but inoffensive hangout movie. Eddie Harrison, filmauthority.com, 3 out of 5.
DC Cab jumps you in the spirit of a big, shaggy, and affection-craving pooch. You may wish it weren't quite so sloppily demonstrative, but it's too full of zest and goodwill to be resisted. Gary Arnold, The Washington Post.
That was a lot more positive than mine was.
Yes. All right. So you may start with these ones. These are great.
Okay. This is one of the worst comedies I have ever seen. There were so many scenes that made no sense. It was a painful viewing experience. Brandon Collins, medium popcorn, 1 out of 5.
This movie should have never been made. Everyone involved in this film should have reconsidered their careers after this one. Justin Brown, medium popcorn, 1 out of 5.
What can you say about a film that has Mr. T in a starring role? Dennis Schwartz. Dennis Schwartz movie reviews, C+. You could say a lot, Dennis. You could say a lot of good things.
By any rational measure, DC Cab is pretty terrible, but for all its faults, it's our movie because it gets the fact that this town has more sides than just the two on either side of the congressional aisle. Ian Buckwalter, Washington City Paper, and even though he said kind of something nice, he gave it 4 out of 10.
It's lewd, crude, and rude, but it deserves a salute for featuring as eclectic a cast as can be found this side of Otto Preminger's Skidoo. Matt Brunson, Film Frenzy, 2 out of 4.
Yeah, Matt Brunson. DC Cab is not an entirely bad movie. It has its moments. But if it had used more actual taxi riding incidents and more recognizable driver types, it could have been a little masterpiece. Roger Ebert, Chicago Sun-Times, 2 out of 4.
That was super nice.
Yeah, for a bad review.
Yeah.
IMDb. 5.3 thousand, 5,300. User rating comes in at 5.5 out of 10. Pretty close to Rotten Tomatoes audience. So let's go start at 10 and you may start.
I'm ready. Something about cabs. I don't know. It's got Mr. T in it. That's all you need. 10 out of 10. Full of Redis.
One of my absolute favorites from the 80s. 9 out of 10. Messalay Williams, 220.
Look at that cast. 8 out of 10. Magnum etched.
It ain't Shakespeare. 7 out of 10. Zanos. It has an asterisk. It was the only one at 7.
I mean, it's eloquent. You don't need anything else.
No.
Guilty Pleasure. 6 out of 10. Snavely 6.
Like most cabs, it stinks just a bit. I try not to laugh because it's true. 5 out of 10. Jay Zvedza.
There is a cab smell. I'd like to point. There is a cab smell.
There is, yeah. And when you got someone that's working 8 to 18 hours a day, you're gonna get a cab smell. They're eating in there.
Yeah, there's always a cab smell.
Yeah, it's there.
A nice message, but a dumb movie and not family fare. 4 out of 10. CC the Movie Man, 1. What about an R-rated comedy did he think was going to be family fare?
Maybe because I had Mr. T.
Ugh.
Again, the only one that was there. Outright overacted hilarity. 3 out of 10. I read this one, TEH Memories. He just said the acting was horrible. It was just so overacted that it just was stupid.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of them were mostly comedians and.
Well, yeah. Even as a fan of Mr. T, I couldn't swallow this swill. 2 out of 10, Movie Man Kev. And this was the only 2 out of 10 that we had.
Yep. There was no 1 out of 10.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
That's nice.
All right. So we went over the box office. We went over the tail of the tape and we looked at the reviews. Let us watch the trailer and then make our prediction.
Washington, D.C., seat of the nation, served by the dedicated men and women of D.C. Cab.
We're the worst company in town, and we know it. Where to, baby?
Nowhere with you.
You ain't got no company. No, you have an asylum. Kill. Get out of my cab, I'm ready.
Pleased to meet you, Miss Oswald.
They had enough class.
How do you do?
My cab ain't no motel. You ought to be ashamed of yourself. You're a pitiful specimen of manhood.
Enough style.
Just as I suspected. Look at this room. It isn't fit for Caucasians.
But where y'all going? What it look like?
Enough integrity.
You charge Mr. and Mrs. Tomatsu $195.
They had a lot of luggage.
Enough spirit. To drive a whole city crazy.
You don't have to shut us down.
This company is closed pending further investigation.
But when it looked like their number was up, that's when they really got down.
Make an investment in DC Cab.
Are you saying that we'd be like partners?
If I wanted responsibility, I'd have been a damn sex surrogate.
We just might make something of ourselves.
Well, not actually do anywhere for a few years.
They proved that anybody can be somebody if they're ready to reach for a big enough dream.
never going back to being what I was before. Never.
So put your life in the hands of Adam Baldwin, Charlie Barnett, Irene Cara, Max Gail, Bill Maher,
Tough to be a man, baby.
Paul Rodriguez, Mr. T, and Gary Busey. It's everything you always wanted in a cab company. And less. DC Cab.
This movie found its synthesizer. All right. What is your prediction about DC Cab?
I think this is going to be absolutely terrible. Like just a big steaming pile of shit.
Yeah.
But now my question is it going to be entertaining shit? Or am I going to want to throw up?
I think we were worried about when we did Smokey and the Bandit. We thought for sure it was going to be offensive, and it was not at all. Like a little tiny. This looks like it could be.
Yeah,
just a little.
I feel like in my soul, I'm probably going to spend a lot of time being like, "Oh God, that's terrible."
I have not seen this movie probably since the 80s, which means I was super young. I probably thought it was funny because they were wacky, they were cursing, they were doing silly stuff. Yeah, I don't know. I think, it's probably going to be bad. It's just, it could be entertainingly bad.
Yeah, I'm really hoping for that because if I spend an hour and 39 minutes just being like, really, guys? Really? That's the joke you're going to make? It's fine. We'll figure it out.
All right. Well, we are going to go and watch DC Cab. And when we come back, we are going to review it before we go on and preview Death Wish 2 for our drive-in special.
Go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Delicious things to eat.
The popcorn can't be beat. The sparkling drinks are just dandy. The chocolate bars and the candy. So let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
And now, on with the show.
Welcome back, everybody. Did you watch DC Cab from 1983? Uh-oh. You're muted. So hold on. You're muted on your end.
Happen.
There you go. Did you watch DC Cab?
I did.
What's your initial thoughts?
That was a steaming pile of shit.
It was not a well done movie. No.
Not
What's
even
your
a little bit?
What's your initial thoughts?
Why the fuck did they make this movie? Like it was okay. It wasn't painful to watch, but it wasn't fun to watch either. Like I realized we were probably an hour into the movie before I actually laughed out loud at one thing. And it wasn't any of the action. It wasn't any of the dialogue. It was a t-shirt. I laughed really hard at that.
The t-shirt.
The doctor t-shirt.
The what t-shirt? The doctor one?
T-shirt. Yeah. One of the guys wearing a doctor t-shirt. It looks like a white coat, tie, little.
Oh, yeah.
I laughed out loud at that. Nothing else. Well, actually, no. There were a few small, towards the end, but it was. I spent the majority of the movie going, "What?" That's it. Like what? Which was a little upsetting. But I mean, it was a chaotic movie, but not even like a chaotic movie that has purpose. It was just randomly chaotic, and it
was very chaotic.
It was so hard to follow, and I was trying to find the story within it. Because even the shittiest movies should have a basic story. You should be able to sum it up in like 3 sentences of what the story's about.
Oh yeah, you can't tell. You
can't do that with this
here.
movie.
No, not at all.
But yeah, what were your thoughts? Tell me yours.
I am so sorry, but the nostalgia of having watched this movie umpteen times as a kid, I still liked it. Don't get me wrong. This is a horrible movie. There's no defending this as like an actual movie. It was paced wrong. It was politically incorrect.
It's
awesome. It turns into a cartoon. The silliness of the 80s and 90s of taking a regular story of characters and turning it into this like international calamity that must be solved by these silly people that in reality would have no chance of doing. And this movie didn't have just one, it had like 3 of them. Like it just kept going and going and going to get to those other parts. I get it, but yeah, you couldn't sum this movie up. I would say like Mr. T.
Honestly,
Mr. T, Gary Busey.
Mr. T, there's so much. Like I understand the concept. Collection of oddballs working at this cab company. Cool. But it's one of those things where you're watching it and you're like, I don't know.
Too much.
Yeah. Like it was just so like normally when there's crazy, there's a reason for the crazy. And there's too much crazy to get a handle on it. And I'm sure if you, like you said, the nostalgia is like, this is hardcore 80s. 100%.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Yeah.
And I feel like it's supposed to be a comedy, but it almost like just kind of it went off the rails really early on.
And kept going off the rails.
It kept going off the rails.
Yeah.
It kept finding the rails and going off of it again and again and again. And I was like, nah, man.
And it usually didn't find the rails that it was once on. It found new rails and then went fucking off those rails.
So many rails.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's go through this movie. Naive but good-natured young man Albert Hockenberry, Baldwin, arrives in Washington, D.C. with plans to work for his late father's army buddy, Harold Gale, that's our Barney Miller dude, owner of the rundown District of Columbia Cab Company, DC Cab. Aware of the sorry state of his business and growing competition from the popular Emerald Cab Company, Harold wants to clean it up but does not have the financial means to do so. Complicating matters is the motley group of cab drivers that he has working for him. They all see driving as a dead-end job while they wait for better lives until Albert inspires them to work as a team. Okay, so Wikipedia, fucking their synopsis is like 2 paragraphs.
Yeah. They couldn't get a handle on the crazy either.
No. Okay, so the movie starts with the game that we really don't get explained as how this game works.
No.
But all the players, the cab drivers, wear these creepy masks, chase another player. But the movie starts off with us thinking these are psychos chasing this guy. Then they chase him down this tunnel thing. And then he yells, "Time out," because he lost one of the rollers out of his hair. And then he screams, "Suckers," and runs away and chases, and he gets away in his cab.
Yeah.
They start chasing him, and he starts playing the Mission Impossible theme music over the radio.
Yes, which is so helpful to the dispatcher.
And then the dispatcher's like, "Anyone there?
Anybody? And I'm like, I have a feeling this is why the cab company's not doing well.
Exactly.
They set up the beginning like a horror movie.
Yes.
And I was like, okay, weird.
And it is creepy and weird. And you're like, what is going on?
And I'm
already
like,
you're like,
I'm like, what the fuck? And then it's like, I kept hearing roll up. And I was like, oh, roll up. What? And then I was like, oh, is he talking about the rollers? Or is he talking about his roll? Like a rolled joint? Because that I'd stop everything to go looking for. If it's a plastic roller, I'll just go buy more. But it was a very weird beginning. And then the Mission Impossible song starts, which
and they're all going nuts in their car.
Yeah. And they're all losing their minds. And I'm like, okay. Because nobody explains anything.
No.
And then we see young Albert Hockenberry arrive in DC and start randomly asking people on the streets,
Yeah, where's DC Cab?
where is DC Cab?
How would they know?
Fuck right. What? I was like, what? And then he's asking, this is one of the problems I had. He asked the people who were kind of dressed as Rastafarians, we'll say, or what was considered
Yeah, and he was the guy's
Caribbean
DC
guys
Cab?
dancing
Yeah.
on the DC Cab. He asks them about it. They don't say anything. And they just grunt at him. There are grunt, and I was like, so let me get this straight. You can't pay, this was my thought, you can't pay the extra to say no. So you're going to put in post FX of grunts, which, by the way, not a good look when you've got black Rasta styled people dancing on a car in downtown DC. I'm like, this is a little fucked up.
Yeah. Come on, it's 1983.
It was fucked up in 1983 and it's fucked up now.
This isn't the only politically incorrect. This is just the beginning.
This is just there's so much wrong. I looked up who the writer is and I was like, oh buddy, it was a black writer.
Yeah.
And I'm like, did Joel Schumacher just like go to town with this? Was there a ghost writer, a ghost editor? I'm like, this is because then I looked up the writer's other credits, and there was some stuff in there that I really liked. And I was like, he wrote on Martin, the TV show, for 2 years, and he was credited as like, I think, a co-creator. And I was like, I love Martin. Martin was amazing. This is not. Anywho.
So
Albert finally finds the
So then we get the 80s montage, and that's Albert trying to get to the DC Cab, trying to make his way to the DC Cab company. And it shows different cab drivers getting into shenanigans, getting kicked out of the airport because they don't have a license to be there. Mr. T picking up a businessman and an obvious prostitute who starts going down on the businessman, and Mr. T, horrified, kicks them out.
He says, my cab is not a motel. I gotta get that bread.
Pitiful excuse for a man, and you need to get a real job.
I gotta get that bread. Go to the bakery.
Yeah, go to the bakery. Paul Rodriguez, Xavier, trying to pick up the woman, tries to pick up the woman and then drive them to their destination at the same time.
Yeah, he picks up the woman and then he's like, so where are you going? And she's like, nowhere with you. Bye.
The Barbarian Twins, and I call them the Barbarian Twins because in the 80s they made a fairly popular sword Dungeons and Dragons type movie that actually I remember being really good, but it's been a while. So starring these two guys.
I don't trust you. I don't trust your
I don't trust my judgment anymore either. His wife, then we get poor Ophelia getting robbed. I had to go and make these little jot notes here because Wikipedia has nothing. That little bit that I said at the beginning, and then they drop down to the violin being stolen and found. They just skip everything, and I get it. Poor Ophelia, she's getting robbed by a mugger. Then we meet Mr. Rhythm. The Barbarian Twins are holding up traffic. They're on opposite ends of the street, talking to each other, like side by side.
They're
going opposite ways. The two lanes.
The two separated. They're just sitting there.
The trunk's just laying on their horn, and they get out and just rip the cab right out.
Yeah. It's
all right,
pure chaos.
Oh,
it is pure unadulterated chaos. And then he gets into Dell's cab, I think, Albert. And then it turns, that's how he ends up getting to DC Cabs, I think. He rides in a cab.
Does he? Okay. Yeah. Because he finally gets there.
He finally gets there. He says hi. But there was a conversation that was filled with inappropriate words.
Oh, that's coming up.
Oh, is that coming up?
Yeah, that's coming up. I did. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
There was so much chaos. It was so hard to follow. There was no rhyme or reason. It was literally just like, it was almost an anthology of just batshit crazy.
Oh, I just think they shot all this chaos and then whittled it down to an hour and 39 minutes.
Actually, that sounds accurate.
Yeah, this is what we got. Here we go. But Albert's dad went to Vietnam with Harold, and they were best friends. Albert's dad died. Harold didn't make it to the funeral, but Harold's super excited to see Albert. His wife, not so much.
Mm.
Then some cabbies need their cars, so Harold has to go work on them. We get the first, so we get first of Dell's Gary Busey jokes. He tells Harold's wife, Miriam, who he relentlessly hits on throughout this movie.
Yeah.
Like, what is it? I wrote it down here. What's the only thing wrong with oral sex? The View. And he just howls at himself. And he's just like, repeat the view. And no one's around anymore. He's just laughing on the table. Watching Gary Busey's character in this movie was like watching all my uncles at every holiday dinner of my childhood. Just no filter, totally inappropriate language.
Okay, I have a few uncles like that. They've mellowed in their old age.
Yes.
So, I mean, now that they're in their 80s, it's not so bad.
Yeah. But a few
like,
years
they would
ago,
say inappropriate stuff, and you're just like, God, do you have to be so terrible?
although when you're a kid, it's hilarious. You're like,
No, when I was a
best.
kid, I was like, ew, gross.
Oh,
Why
well,
you
yeah,
talk about
maybe if you're a girl.
titties? Well, I'm not going to say most of my uncles were pervs, but there were a lot of pervs in my family, and the men were mostly the pervs, and then the women were just like, I'm like, ew, this is gross. What is wrong with these people?
They tell, and then he sees Tyrone. Tyrone owes him money for the cab rental, and he's like, I got the money, and everyone comes over to get what he owes them, like $20 here, $10 there. We find out he has all this money because he overcharged a nice Asian couple, and the cab commissioner or the transport commissioner, I don't know what he was.
I think he was
some sort of train.
He was like not a transit cop, but like I think it was for cabs specifically or private transport, something like that. Because it wasn't like public transport, and it wasn't not really a city, like it was a city position in that he had to inspect and he was part of the regulatory things for cabs, but it's not like he was in charge of like public buses or anything like that.
And then he was with the Asian couple, and he was telling them that we're going to shut you down. And then Harold is like, I've got the money, Yeah, because he's overcharged these people, and all the warnings going on. As he's doing that, Tyrone puts his hand in and puts the car in reverse. So when they go to leave, he backs up and smashes a Chinese restaurant where all the people of the Chinese restaurant come out yelling at everybody. And Tyrone, another politically incorrect part, makes the Chinese face as he drives away. Oh, this movie was so bad.
It was a lot of terrible. It was funny in the 80s, though. I'm going to put that out there.
What's that?
I see why it was funny in the 80s.
Yes, and making the Chinese face and doing the ho 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 ho. A lot of people did that in the 80s.
Yeah,
people did when they learned. Usually at my house and at my uncle's house, and it was a big group. We would order pizza. We would order whatever. If someone said, "Let's order Chinese food," oh my God, let the politically incorrectness just roll. It was, and we are talking about the 80s. We didn't know better. And it wasn't me.
I would argue maybe we knew better, but
maybe we knew better.
It was widely accepted.
There was
a lot of there's nothing wrong. It's all in good fun. I don't mean it bad.
Yeah, no. And really back then people didn't give a shit.
No, really not enough. Yeah. Not enough people gave a shit.
No. Yeah, and then where are we here? So with that, yeah, for those listening, if you're easily offended, this is
don't watch this.
Definitely not the movie for you.
No.
Like
don't
if you're super easy offended, no, don't watch this movie.
It's kind of gross. Like, don't do it. Don't.
Harold and Albert go back and stay at his house and drink all night, where Albert announces he wants to become a cab driver to one day open his own cab. We get where his wife wants a beer and yells at him. We find like that the wife is not a nice person.
She is not happy in the relationship. And
no. And if you look at her house.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I wouldn't be happy either if I was literally missing walls. But excuse me. It's funny because she's like, who drank the last beer or whatever? There's not even a beer for me. You know, I need to have a beer while watching Johnny Carson to go to sleep. And I was like, girl, I feel like you should look into that because that's a problem.
Yeah.
Also, Johnny Carson, that's the late night host you're going to pick? Okay.
You didn't
I
like
mean,
Johnny?
Johnny Carson was super popular.
Yes, really popular.
Really, really popular. So I'm like, I get it. But like, she's like, no, I need it. No, I don't want to drink it. Even if you brought me all the beer, I wouldn't drink any of it. And da da da. And I was like, you're not happy at all. And
No.
all Harold does is, I'm going to go get some beer.
And then he gets him the sheets and the blanket. I like the part where he goes, if you're cold, he goes, I brought this home from Nam. He puts on a fucking blowtorch. And then like just lights it by just blasting with the a blowtorch. It's not
it's a
not a
flamethrower.
a flamethrower.
A flamethrower. He starts the fire with the fire in the fireplace.
Yeah, and
in the
he's
house.
drunk.
Yeah,
and he's got a big smile on his face as he's blasting his fireplace with this flamethrower.
Yep.
Yeah.
See, that's another crazy. Like, there's a reason for the crazy, but that's another crazy where I'm like, did we even need this? Did we? No, we didn't.
Then, I do like him riding. So he decides that if Albert's going to get some experience by driving around with all the other cab drivers. I did like how he went with every cab driver, like an apprentice. So we get to see the other cabbies, thus getting even more politically incorrectness, seeing tons of them, like Gary Busey. And this is where he's talking. What does he say here? I wrote it down. Don't cancel me. Just repeating it.
No, feel free to use some euphemisms.
Yeah, because he said DC is 75%. Now, he doesn't say the full N word here.
Eventually he does. But
does he?
Yeah, because it starts with the shorter version of the N-word.
And he says, or black or colored or whatever you want to call them.
Whatever you're
calling them.
And then he keeps talking for a bit. And then he says, because I have the literal note, I'm like, Gary Busey just using the whole N-word. Just right up in there. And it's weird because in 1983, we still knew it was a bad word. We still knew.
Oh, I think before 1983, we knew it was a bad word.
Yeah.
They pick up a topless stripper or waitress or whatever. We see her boobies as she's changing, even though she tells him not to look. Yeah. And then she skips out on the fare. And Dell sends Albert in to get money. And we see a shitload of boobies.
So many boobies.
This
movie found time for the boobies.
Albert gets thrown out because she said that he touched her or something like that. And then Dell goes in and practically robs her.
Yeah.
Take all her money that's in her G-string. And her G-string comes with it. Yeah.
She runs outside buck naked. And then somebody comes in and tries to cover her with a tablecloth.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, didn't really do its job because we see some full frontal. There's a little bit of bush there. I'm like, okay, this is definitely the 80s. It was all just a lot. It was a lot.
Yeah, and then Xavier with the cha-cha-cha music playing and the Latino horn, the cucaracha, telling Albert that he wants to land a rich woman to take care of him. We also get the Barbarian Twins driving backwards, screaming at all the other cars, telling the story of the guy getting sliced in half.
Yes, also because their car only goes in reverse.
Only goes in reverse, yeah.
Only goes in reverse. They're on their way to the garage to get it fixed, but it only goes in reverse.
Mr. T driving around with Albert and his niece, taking her to school, and then he sees the local drug dealer and gets out and yells at the kids to go back to school, and he wishes he could help clean up the neighborhood. Him practicing for the cab. Some other shenanigans. Oops. Give me 1 second here.
Oh, no worries.
Crap. What was that? Gary Busey was just laying in the urinals, the bathroom?
Yeah, he was laying on the bathroom floor, and the bathroom floor looked disgusting.
And he's like, what are you doing, Del?
Intestinal yoga.
And just starts laughing at himself.
I couldn't even... I was like, that is a grungy bathroom floor.
It looked gross.
It looked so gross. I couldn't even focus because I was like, that's disgusting.
Yeah. Okay. So Ophelia gets robbed again. And is going to walk out, and then Harold convinces her to stay.
Okay, we talk about that conversation, though, real quick? Because I was very uncomfortable with how it went. Like, Harold was basically manhandling her.
Oh, because she wanted to leave?
Because she kept wanting to leave. And instead of just standing in front of her, or, like, putting his arm on, the lockers to kind of block her way, he was literally pushing her and manhandling her. And I was like, this is not okay.
I blame that on the director.
I blame it on everybody because nobody's saying this is fucking weird.
It was weird.
Literally manhandling her. Like both hands on her, pushing her back against the lockers, and I was like, dude, this woman is trying to tell you she's sick of getting held up at gunpoint, and your answer is to just keep pushing her into the lockers until she like succumbs to your pressure and says, fine, I'll stay. I'm like, that's fucking weird and gross.
They go for a beer though. That they go to an all male review.
Yeah.
And they wait for the women to come out, and for whatever reason, these women just want to go hang out with these lunatics and their shitty cabs.
I think it's because they were all standing on their cabs dancing when the women came out.
Oh yeah, right. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
They were like, ooh, the show's over. And they all jumped on their cabs and started like bumping and grinding.
I
And
get
I'm like,
the Barbarian Twins, but Paul Rodriguez and Tyrone, like Tyrone didn't even look like he could, like he was like having a seizure.
oh my God, such a grabbing at his crotch. And I was like, that is not sexy on anybody. What the fuck is happening? That was another what the fuck is happening moment. And so many times I was like, the fuck.
And then Albert, no one wants to take Albert, so he walks back, and then he talks to Bubba, who is Bill Maher, and who drops some wisdom on him. Then they're at the diner, and then we get again like Dale just hitting on the what did you say? I can suck the white off your teeth.
Yeah.
It's so gross.
Totally, 100%.
And then she's like, "Not now, I got a headache," and that's when he does. He grabs her by the head and says, Lord, heal this woman.
Yeah. See, I would have stabbed him if he did that to me.
Gary Busey is insane.
Uh-huh.
I don't think he acts. I think he's nuts. Like every movie, like you just watch him, you're like, I don't think he's acting. I think he's a lunatic. And I love Gary Busey.
We all, like deep down inside, we all love Gary Busey. But at the same time, we all think he's a little unstable.
Albert sees the diner's owner's granddaughter.
Yep.
At this, it was bugging me who she was. Her name is Jill Schoelen. She was in The Stepfather, the original one, Phantom of the Opera with Robert Englund, the Popcorn movie. She's been in a ton of B horror movies.
Oh, she was in When a Stranger Calls Back. Maybe that's why I recognized her.
Yeah. Yeah, she's been in a few. Not a ton, but she's been in a few.
Oh, she was also in When a Stranger Calls. Interesting.
There you go. The original one or
the original
remake?
One? Yeah. That's a good remake. It's been a while since I've seen it, but it's a good remake.
Emerald Taxi keeps trying to poach Ophelia. Because she's and even Harold is like, you're my best driver. Like everyone else here is a fucking moron. And
she's the only one who seems even relatively sane.
Yeah. Her and Bill Maher. He seems
kind of
more than the other ones.
Yeah.
Everyone else is fucking nuts.
He seems like the kind of his character. Let's make this clear so we don't get sued. His character seems like the kind of guy who has a lot of white man tears.
Yeah.
Poor me. Poor me. Nobody gives me everything I want on a silver platter. Me.
You don't like Bill Maher?
No.
Really?
No.
Oh, I love Bill Maher.
He's got some really fucked up takes. He's got some really fucked up takes where I'm like, sir, have you been snorting some stuff? Because I'm concerned. If your brain came to that conclusion, you've been hit in the head.
I think we should do a daily news show. I think we'd be great. Because I think we have not completely polar opposites, but definitely some opposites.
We definitely have some opposites, which is kind of funny to me. Just because I'm like, it makes sense. Like we're gonna have very different.
Oh, I thought because I'm white and
I'm white.
What are you? You're Portuguese.
I'm Portuguese.
You're kind of white. You're off white.
I get
eggshell
mistaken for a person of color constantly because I have too much olive in my skin tone and my hair is dark, almost black and curly.
Black.
So people are like, what are you? And I'm
you're not white. Get out of here.
I'm just like a basic European, but also according to Europeans, Portuguese, Spanish, Italians. We're the swarthy ones.
Yeah.
They don't really consider us white either. And I'm like, nah, man, we're just as white and as colonizing as the rest of you motherfuckers.
Oh yeah. Oh
if
yeah.
not more so. Thank you.
Yeah. You're in the jacuzzi you're in the hot tub with all us colonizing whiteys.
Yes, we are.
So a fight breaks out at the diner, and then the commissioner and the violin.
Yes.
Then
Apparently, a violinist has lost his
Left.
violin, which is worth, I think, $100,000.
Yeah, and so I think it's worth like $500,000.
Oh, okay, and so whichever cabbie finds it
gets a reward. Then we get where we see Mr. T, his niece driving around with the drug dealer, and he loses it.
Mm-hmm.
Tyrone goes to his cab. Oh, because Albert wanted to drive with Tyrone. He's the only one that he hasn't driven with yet. Tyrone won't do it, but then he gets to his cab, and there's Albert not budging. They drive the maids to the ambassador's house with the two kids, are waiting with the eggs, and Tyrone drives them every day. This is very important later on. Then Tyrone goes to the airport, and they pick up that drunk who wants to go to the airport that they're already at. And he's like, $50. And then 5 feet later, he's like, international airport, that'll be $50. Then we get Albert giving money back, and
it won't help him steal. Yeah.
And Tyrone gets mad, and then he gets a speech where he's pretending to be a crazy black man wearing curlers, when in reality he was in college and he was going to get himself a Mercedes, but he got hip to the scam, and he showed them by dropping out and being part of the system. And I'm like, what the fuck is this man talking about? Like, Jesus Christ. Because it was a long speech.
And that
made no sense.
Well, it would make sense in a different movie.
Yes, in a very
in this movie with this character that we've seen so far up until now, it don't make no goddamn sense. Period. End of sentence. It makes no fucking sense.
No, I can only surmise that there was a little bit more to this that got cut.
If somebody
or maybe not
more to this, then I don't know who the fuck was Joel Schumacher's doing wrong by this movie. If more was cut, but the character we've seen is just a crazy.
He's crazy.
He's just crazy, like absolutely batshit crazy. And then all of a sudden, he has this, like, his curler is actually the head full of curlers is actually a wig. He takes it off. He goes off on this whole thing about how the system and school and it's a scam, and I thought I could have it, but I can't. Da 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 da. And I was like, that speech belongs in a different movie. For a different character.
Yeah.
This is not, it would make sense if he even talked about why he plays the crazy, but he doesn't. Like, he doesn't explain how dropping out of school because he couldn't get a Mercedes, I don't understand that, connects to him and his current persona. I'm just like, this is so fucking random.
Yeah. So then he leaves Albert behind. Then he goes back and gets Albert. Then they go to the graveyard and hang out. And Tyrone's mad because he's missing the game. And you hear the Mission Impossible music playing. Albert wants to join, but it's only for psychic blood brothers of DC Cab. Is that what it was?
Guess so.
And he's like, well, how do I become one of them? They start driving down the railroad tracks, listening to Irene Cara, which is also important. It's important later on. We get a lot of politically incorrect here. I do like him talking about Albert being chicken shit and don't give me your daddy is dead shit. He said, my daddy came back from Korea and he thought he was Jesus, and they put him in a loony bin. And then they let him out and he thought it was God, which made me Jesus. What the fuck is this guy talking about?
I was trying so hard to follow the conversation, and then I was like, I don't know about, I think they're just saying
words. Crazy.
They're just saying words.
The cab gets stuck as the train is coming. Albert gets stuck trying to get out. Tyrone decides to help him, and he's like, if I get killed, Albert, I'm going to kick your ass. The train's barreling down. Tyrone's screaming, I don't want to die. I don't want to die. And then it's actually on another track, and they're all both sweating, and Tyrone's like, I knew it was that all the time. And then he passes out. On the way back to the yard, they get robbed by the same guy who was robbing Ophelia, who jumps into their cab, but Albert takes off and he's like, see, Tyrone, I ain't no chicken shit. And Tyrone's like, This is when you should be chicken shit. Tyrone is like, oh, when he's, I'm going to Negro heaven. I don't want to go to Negro heaven. He didn't say Negro.
No, he did not. He did not.
But he is black, so he's allowed to.
It's also just weird. Like,
yeah,
you can just say black heaven.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah. Albert tells the mugger, he's like, I'm going to shoot your friend or shoot you. And he's like, whatever, then you'll die. And he's like, they get it, they get to the cab thing. And he's telling to give the gun to Tyrone. And Tyrone's like, I don't want the gun. I don't want the gun. Then Tyrone grabs the gun. And he's like, I got the gun, you motherfucker. And the cops automatically think Tyrone is the mugger and start beating on him.
Yep.
That was awesome. But because they're all, while this was all going on, they're saying that there's a $10,000 reward. They're trying to figure out whose cab it belongs. And the commissioner dude says, Harold owns the company, therefore he owns all the cab. He's getting the money.
Yeah.
And then he announces about that it's a $10,000 reward and he's going to share it. And they all go ape shit. His wife loses it. Then they meet Harold at Harold's house, where Myrna has locked them out, taken the money house, and they're trying to get in, and she's shooting the flamethrower out the window at all the cab drivers.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot going on here.
It's funny because she said that she saw somebody on, I think it was like the Today Show or Good Morning America or something like that. And then she was like, I'm entitled. I'm entitled. So she takes the house, changes the locks, uses a flamethrower to keep people from trying to climb in through the window on the upper level, because why use the window on the main floor where you don't have to climb up the porch roof? Because that would be ridiculous. Why would you do that? Yeah. And everybody's just screaming at her, and she's in the window wearing a very lovely silk nightie, and it's all just very odd. Wielding a flamethrower.
With a flamethrower, yeah.
Out the window. I'm like, I feel like that's not safe.
Now we get back to where Wikipedia is. A valuable violin is found in one of the cabs, earning Harold and his wife $10,000 reward as owners of the cabs. Harold wants to share the money with the drivers and let them invest in the cab company as partners. However, his greedy wife, Myrna, picks up the reward money and tosses Harold and Albert's belongings out of the house. The cabbies are not happy about losing their share of the reward, so Albert decides to donate $6,000 of his own money to the cab company and convinces the drivers to stay and make something of the company and themselves. The cabbies completely overhaul the entire business, and revitalized company soon supplements Emerald Cab as the most popular in the city. Yes, they're all going to quit till Albert produces his life savings from his dad
in cash.
Except Tyrone. Tyrone doesn't stick around. Yeah, he has all cash in his fucking.
Yeah, Tyrone is like, man, fuck that shit, and he leaves.
Yeah. They get the cars fixed up, new jackets, new sign, all and 80s montage.
Yeah.
They get airport licenses. Dell gets a new car system and blows out his windows as he's screaming. He didn't care.
And the roof collapses. The roof of the car collapses.
And the roof of the car. I didn't get that part.
I didn't get that part either. But I'm like, hey, apparently his car is made of cardboard. That's cool.
Yeah. Albert shows up. Oh, because the grandmother said one day a nice gentleman's going to come in here with chocolates and flowers and ask my daughters to date my granddaughter. So Albert shows up with chocolates and a book and flowers and asks the diner if he can take out Claudette. And she says, yeah. So everything's going smoothly.
Yes. Also, if you've watched any TV from the 80s or 90s, you recognize the grandmother.
What is she from? Yes, I did recognize it. What is she?
You recognize her and you're like, I know that face. So she has done so many things.
Oh, she's one of those where she just is in everything.
She was on Diagnosis Murder, Popular, Murder, She Wrote, Air Force One, Married with Children, Seinfeld, Melrose Place, Wings, Nash Bridges. I don't know who watched that, but somebody did. Grace Under Fire, Sisters, Outbreak.
Yeah, so she has that look where she could be sweet old lady or a mean old lady.
Yeah, she's been in so much. And if you watched any TV in the 80s or 90s, you have seen her. She has done an episode of Baywatch, Quantum Leap, Home Improvement. She's been an episode of Matlock.
Yeah, everything.
Everything. Actually,
like
2
those
episodes.
Actors.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. She's like, I was looking at her and I was like, I know your face. I know your face. And then I looked her up and I was like, I've seen your face a million times.
Because if you're a decent actor, which it can't be that hard. I'm not talking about a great actor. I'm not talking about Academy. I'm just like a run of the mill actor.
If you're a really good character actor
and you have a look,
yeah,
whether you're bald or you're wacky looking, you're fat, tall, skinny, if you have just an off look, you could probably make a decent living. Like her, like she probably made a pretty good living just appearing in every goddamn TV show.
A lot of the shows that she did are notorious for using the same actor in multiple roles in different episodes. So like in Matlock, she had 2 different characters. She's done a couple episodes of, she did an episode, I think, and then a special for Murder, She Wrote. So a lot of those, like especially the weekly story shows, like the Matlocks, the Diagnosis Murder or whatever, where they had like a murder each episode or a story that was contained into the episode. It very much, a lot of the actors would get recast because they're like, he does good work. He can totally do this. We'll just hire him. We do this in animation all the time.
Right.
So for voice actors, we'll be we know this actor can do this voice, this voice. I had one show that I worked on and literally we had the same actor for like 6 different roles because he could do 6 different voices.
Yeah.
So we're like, great, we'll just bring him in and like have him record for like an hour and he'll do everything.
Yeah.
So she's one of those actors that you like, she can do it. Let's bring her in.
Yeah. Okay, so everything is going smoothly. Del shows up. Tyrone is selling Americana souvenirs to tourists. He's dressed up like Uncle Sam. He sees Irene Cara, we mentioned her earlier, coming out of the hotel and takes Del's cab to pick her up, of course. Also, later on, the cabbies. Oh, okay. So I'm back on Wikipedia. Cabbies work together to rescue Albert and the diplomat's 2 children, and they're kidnapped. So Tyrone always drove these ladies to their work as maids to the ambassador's house. Now Albert is doing it. This time, though, the kidnappers are waiting, and they grab the kids. And Albert, I can't remember how Albert got fucking thrown into the.
Well, because
I think he was trying to help. And
he was trying to help. The 2 maids end up getting pushed down.
Yeah.
One guy manages to grab the girl and get her into the van. But then security starts. The other guy has the little boy. Albert's trying to help, trying to stop him from taking the little boy. Security comes and the kidnapper says, "You're going to drive us or I'm going to shoot him." So Albert has to drive him in the cab because the van has already taken off with the little girl and the other kidnapper. Or the other 2 kidnappers. My apologies.
Right.
It's 2 men and a woman. The woman was dressed like a nun.
That's right. So we get the authorities getting demands, and Albert's made to give the demands.
With a gun pointed to his head. We should probably...
And then he's all nerd, and the kids are like, "Is this your first kidnapping, Albert?" Sorry. We get the stud muffin call when they're waiting for the ransom to come in, and that's I guess prostitute calls the ambassador.
Yeah, it was so lovely.
And the authorities all think that Albert is part of it. They think DC Cab got this makeover from Albert's illegal doings. They close DC Cab. Everyone's going to quit again until Mr. T gives a speech. They try and come up with something. Tyrone comes in with papers, and he's not looking crazy anymore. Then they decide, as only a wacky 80s caper can do, to find Albert themselves. They interrogate the younger maid, then pose as doctors to interrogate the older maid. That's where
the doctor t-shirt was.
The t-shirt, and this food isn't fit for Caucasians.
Yeah.
And this is all just silly wackiness. And Harold goes to get his stuff from the house, finds Miriam sleeping with the transit commissioner guy, throws him out the window into the pool.
Very nice red briefs.
He's wearing the thong.
I was like, why is he wearing a Speedo? And then I realized, no, this was the 80s. Underwear looked like that back then.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it still does for some people today.
Not this guy.
I was like, oh shit. Racy.
Albert escapes. I do like how hard he works at getting free, and when he finally does, the kids are already free, and they're like, "That was amazing, Albert."
They were like, "Good for you, little buddy."
He goes to his cab to use the radio, but all the cabs are locked up, so he gets Mr. Rhythm, and then he tells him he's at a farm with a wimble, and then he sees Bruce Lee. So Mr. Rhythm finds everybody and tells them. They break out all the cabs. And then they go looking for a farm, a windmill, and Bruce Lee. I like the Barbarian Twins and Mr. T finding the Bruce Lee house. They come through the windows and the door. It's just a family sitting
And then they just say, wrong house.
Oh, wrong house. Sorry.
And the best part is the mom or grandma just keeps eating.
Yeah, just eating.
She's like, 3 strange men just busted into the house. I'm going to keep eating.
And then we get Tyrone. He finds Bruce Lee. And he's like, I found that karate motherfucker. And it's the drive-in. They're watching a Bruce Lee movie at the drive-in. They find the farmhouse. They put the lights and pylons on the cabs to try to make it look like cop cars. Albert was already caught and tied back up. And they're trying to get the kidnappers to come out. Tyrone blows it. There's a shootout. Kids get away. Albert gets taken again. Mr. T screaming like a woman was almost worth the rental itself. Cabs chasing the kidnappers, chucking shit, beating the van with baseball bats. And I did like Ophelia. They got in front and Ophelia was starting to throw her shit. And then she pulls out her dildo. And then she's like, and hands it to Bubba or Bobo. And he's like, yeah, you got to have priorities. And Mr. T grabs Albert, and Tyrone asks if Albert's wearing his daddy's boots because they're too big for him. And he pulls off to the side, and the boots go flying off. And the day is saved. And Albert is saved, and I'm guessing cleared of all suspicion because the film ends with a parade in DC Cab's honor, followed by a post-credit scene with a shabby-looking dressed man climbing into the back of Tyrone's taxi cab and claiming to be the angel of death and requesting Tyrone to take him to hell, in which he asked by Tyrone, do you have any luggage? And that is our movie. And if you didn't understand a fucking word I just said, that's what it's like watching this movie. If you're going, what the fuck is this guy talking about? Like, he's been talking about this movie. I don't get what he said. Yeah, that's pretty much how the movie went.
Join the club. Join the club. None of us understand it. None of us.
So what is your score?
My score is a hard skip it. Now, the only reason you should watch this is if you have seen it before and you loved it, or you were exceptionally inebriated. Whether that be by drink or drugs, you've got to be high as a kite to watch this movie and enjoy it. There are moments that you kind of maybe laugh a little bit, or you're like, oh, that's a good gag. They are few and far between. And there's enough just random, at least it feels random. Maybe it wasn't random in the first draft of the script, but there's enough random slurs thrown around. They use the N-word. They use the F-word. Not the fun one, not fuck. And someone gets called a honky at one point.
Oh, yeah, the honky.
The honky. I was like, wow.
This movie had everything.
It really does. It has cultural insensitivity. It is 1983, though. So, I mean, I'm partially giving it a pass on the cultural insensitivity because nobody was speaking up for minorities at that point. It was just assumed you could abuse them and everybody was going to laugh and it was fine. But the movie is nonsensical. It is. There are huge parts of the movie. Like, I don't know if you noticed this, but after they revamp the cabs and the office, Harold and the dispatcher are apparently in a relationship now. That's why there are candles on the table in the office. I'm like, what the fuck is happening? But you never actually see anything. None of it makes sense. None of it makes sense.
And in one of the posters, Harold and the dispatcher are holding each other.
Yeah. But you see none of that relationship.
None of that.
You never actually see them together. Like standing together, holding hands, hugging, nothing. So I was like, what? Why even say it? None of this makes sense. None of it makes sense. So, I mean, if you're into that, by all means, feel free to watch it, but skip it. Skip it if you like just a semblance of a cohesive story. Like it doesn't have to be a good story, but just any story. One cohesive story from start to finish of a movie. This movie doesn't have that. It does have Mr. T, though. So, I mean, there's that. And Irene Cara, I love her.
So you're saying skip it.
I'm saying skip it. You?
All right. My score. I liked it. But nostalgia played a huge part. Roger Ebert was right. DC Cab, and I just wrote down his thing here by Roger Ebert. DC Cab is not an entirely bad movie. It has its moments, but if it had used more actual taxi riding incidents and more recognizable driver types, it could have been a little masterpiece. I agree with that. Too many zany parts, meaning these bigger than life moments or over the top plot points like the violin, the kidnapping, the impersonation of doctors, the muggers. If it concentrated on the cabbies and those stories, this could have been a comedy. This could have been a great comedy. Keep the boobies, keep the politically correctness. Fuck it, it's 1983. Who gives a shit? I know you need the violin to get Myrna leaving and stealing from Harold. I know you need it to get Albert to offer his money to have this loyalty, so when he is kidnapped, they all feel sense to help him and save him. But you could have concentrated on more craziness from the drivers and end just with the mugger at the end of the movie. Make this a serious problem throughout with this mugger, and the movie ends with them doing this. You didn't need a $500,000 violin reward and kidnapping with millions of dollars in ransom. It's so stupid. This is not an isolated problem to just this movie. This was a running theme in a lot of 80s and 90s that made these movies more zany and silly. But all that aside, my memory of watching DC Cab came flooding back to me as soon as I started watching it with that chase game and the Mission Impossible music playing. And I found myself giggling quite often. The cast is not full of stellar actors. It is, however, full of some seasoned TV veterans and funny comedians. It had boobies. It made me laugh at stuff that would make a woke person's head explode. It had way too much going on, but it had heart. Like it tried. It had a story that branched out so many times it finally came to an end that made sense for the stupidity that it had to become. Except for that fucking marching band. I was like, what the fuck is this?
It was the parade.
The parade, yeah. I'm like, okay. Tyrone and Dell being standout comic relief in a comedy movie. Harold and Albert and Ophelia and Miriam bringing a semblance of realism in such an absurd movie, such a chaotic movie. If you remember liking DC Cab, you probably still will. If you're that type of person. It doesn't warrant a purchase. But for nostalgia and a true hour and 39 minutes of pure zany 80s comedy, montage, boobies, off-color language, it's worth a rental. And it has Mr. T. Come on.
I love Mr. T. Okay.
I pity the fool.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. God bless. I rented this movie and I'm not mad about it, but I'm kind of mad about it because it's like you said, and it's like Ebert said, there's a good movie in here somewhere.
There was, yes, a very good movie somewhere in there.
They just kept throwing shit at the audience and it clouded it. And I'm like, guys, you could have made a great movie. The fuck is this?
Yeah, it's too bad. It's too bad because it could have very easily, just with some tweaks, become like a definite buy and
a little editing,
collection.
Like script editing. It should have, like, it never should have hit this because I feel like they just kept trying to like shove more crazy in there.
Yeah.
And I'm like, we got it. In the first 5 minutes of the movie, we got how fucking crazy everybody is. You don't need to push it all the way in. Like, we get it. So that was my biggest frustration with this movie.